I don't think people realize what what it actually takes or what all entailed to promote a wrestling event.
Oh, absolutely. Not even just a wrestling event, but any sort of an event. Because I think people look at, something like WWE, right? And they go like, oh, it's got to be done a certain way because this is how they do their things. And it's like, well, no, a wrestling event, you got to pull with different avenues, different things. You got to be special. But yeah, absolutely. There's way more that goes into it than people think.
Well, I mean, I think they're on a whole different level as far as an event like your WWEs or your UFC. I mean, that's on the highest level, right? But I mean, just like if you're going to start just say like a local, like your local wrestling promotion, or maybe you're just throwing like a wrestling show for like a fundraiser event, or say, I don't know, your birthday.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
how about that? Yeah. So that's a quick preface. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be doing well. Okay, so we're not going to be doing. There's potential, I should say.
There's an idea floating around.
There's a good motion for this to happen.
Strong possibility.
Right. So typically, my birthday planning starts Jan 1. Right. Gives me approximately 87 days until my birthday, roughly. Well, that's not true, but either way, we plan for 2 months straight. Usually we do about a week to 2 weeks worth of events, but this year I really wanted to have a wrestling show instead because it's something that I haven't done before, right? I've done all sorts of different gimmicky things. I've done video game stuff. I've done softball tournaments, bags tournaments. I've done all sorts of weird things, but I've never held a wrestling show strictly for my birthday. I thought I'm getting quite old in age. I'm single this year going into the birthday, so I don't have a lot of things hold me back from planning something like this. I think this is the time. This is the time to pull the trigger on that. What do you think?
This is the year.
Yeah, this is the year.
No, I think I think between, us, we know enough people to orchestrate such a extravaganza.
And that's the thing, right? Is like, it's who you know and who do you not want to step on toes and so forth. And I think we know a lot of really cool people that are really going to be down for it. I tossed the teaser out, and I got to say the feedback was just overwhelming. The thing that I've noticed, though, and I put this on Twitter, is one of the more annoying things is when you say you're going to hold a show or do it yourself. The first response from everybody is, "How do I get in the ring and slam somebody?" Everybody on earth that's not a wrestler wants to be in the ring at some point. And it's like, I can't have you doing that.
Oh yeah, I recall one time doing being a part of a fundraising event for firefighters or whatever, and like them wanting to get in the ring at some point for like a battle royal or something, or wanting to be part of a match, and it's like, oh, it's just so awkward, so uncomfortable.
It's one of those things where people don't realize like such a weird position it puts you in when you have to say no to that, because you're like. And I said this on Twitter. I said, if I ran a restaurant, would you be like, "Hey, can I come cook something real quick in the back?" Like, you would never do that. You would never. You would never go to somebody's restaurant and say that. I mean, right?
I kind of want to now, or like going to Starbucks. So let me just make it real quick. I know.
Hey, if I give you $20, would you let me pop back there and just mess with the steamer for a little bit? Like, that's the equivalent, and I just don't see like any profession where that's okay. You go to the dentist and you're just like, "Hey, mind if I just like fuck around with those tools for like an extra $40?"
Take a couple X-rays, bite down. Like
I just So after fighting off that initial wave of non-wrestlers saying that, there were quite a few wrestlers that were intrigued about me running a show just because they know me, they know you. And they know who would probably be involved, and they know that would be a lot of fun. But it comes to the first problem with running an event in 2023. And the number one problem that you're going to have if you're planning a wrestling event is when to hold it, because it's the base of the tree that's going to sprout many bullshit branches for you from whatever you decide to plant your roots. Where you decide to, or when you decide to have it, is going to affect where you decide to have it, who can be involved, and how many people will show up. And it affects everything dramatically. So when looking at the month of my birthday, I'm sitting there looking at other events that are happening, other wrestling events, concerts that my friends are doing, just big things that are involved, whether they're like art shows that I know like a bunch of people would be doing that unfortunately they would miss it. And then I've got to go to these venues that have been possibilities and go like, hey, can you free up a Saturday, even though you're a sporting place that's going to have a big Saturday night, soccer, basketball, whatever. Or if you're already booked for whatever, like the date sets such a tone for the rest of your event. And like, that's already got me like thrown through a loop before I even get really started on anything.
Yeah, I mean, definitely venue. So like, well, let's break this down a little bit because, so you say you want to start a wrestling promotion or you just want to have one show, say, okay?
I'm just running one show, yes, to clarify.
But I just in general. So for people listening that maybe are interested in either wanting to put on a wrestling show, maybe it's for a fundraising event, maybe it's for something fun to do at their work.
Yeah.
Or, have an event or, whatever it is. Maybe they want to start a promotion or something. But the first thing is, you need to find what date's going to work. Who's running? Who else is running that weekend in your area where you decide to have it? You got to. Are you gonna rent a ring? Right? Are you gonna rent a ring? Obviously, if you're just doing a one spot show, you probably got to get a ring somewhere. So like maybe you might be looking at another promotion that maybe you can rent their ring for that day. So maybe that's where you can also maybe pull talent from.
If you don't know guys. Yeah. If you or girls, if you're not in circles, definitely partnering with local definitely is a great idea. Because the big thing you don't want to do is have talent. And then, okay, so say I have the Brawler. The Brawler decides he's going to do stuff with me, whoever that is. I don't know. The Smasher. Let's call him the Smasher because of the story.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. That was weird. That just started playing audio. So the Smasher decides he's going to work with you because he's a buddy of yours, whatever. Cool. So you take the Smasher and you're like, all right, I'm going to book a show. I'm going to do it in north side of Chicago. I've got a venue or whatever. Smasher finds out that a promotion that he works a building across the street from there. And you didn't work with that promotion. You didn't know that Smasher worked with them. Suddenly Smasher finds out that your show is pissing off his regular gig at the show across the street that's not booked that night, but they're in the area. And suddenly that, Smasher's no longer going to do your show, and you don't find out until the day of, because Joe Blow guy across the street's not going to throw a shit fit until it's a problem for you. You got to work with these guys because at the end of the day, the wrestlers are trying to get booked at multiple places. They're not really trying to just be a one-trick pony at just one place every weekend. They're trying to get around so they can get some exposure and work with different people. So when you decide to run a show, if you don't work with the local, promotions and stuff like that, you're fucking with your friend's nut, to be frank about it. And you don't fuck with their nuts when it comes to that stuff.
No, not at all. Right. But yeah, so, I mean, you got to secure a ring, right?
Sure.
So you got to either rent a ring, buy a ring. They're not cheap. Say, I was just thinking, if you bought a ring, you also need a trailer to haul it and a truck to pull it.
Place to store it.
You got to think, a place to store it. You got to think of setup and tear down, how that's going to happen.
You got to think, have you ever put a ring together?
Yeah. Do you even know? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, but we'll say for our sake, we're going to rent or borrow someone's ring.
Sure.
All right. Then you got to find a venue that's going to accommodate the size of said ring.
Yep.
So you need to know how tall that ring's going to be, because that's going to determine the venue that you're going to be in.
Yep.
Do they have a high enough ceiling? Can they fit enough people that you're expecting for the event? Things like that. Is there power? Is there lighting? What kind of a building are you getting involved with? Is there, maybe if it's cold out, is there heat in the building, right? A lot of things people don't even think about.
So Finn Balor, famous wrestler, used to be known as Prince Devitt, did a house show for WWE for NXT in 2015, which has a great image. I believe it was in Chicago. I'll send this image to you real quick here so you can see it while I'm explaining it. So this is a major wrestling promotion, right? NXT, WWE. Finn Balor, been around. I think he was doing this on purpose. Maybe not. I'm not sure. Went to do his coup de grace, which is him jumping off the corner top rope and smashing his feet into his opponent. Leaps off the top rope and immediately puts his head into the roof. Now, again, it looks like he had to have known that was going to happen. But again, this is a major wrestling promotion that didn't do their homework on the ceiling size.
And, that's great. That is great.
It affected the show during it.
Well, yeah, because you got to think, like, can guys do their spots off the top? Is it going to affect,
Right.
And okay. And then, are you going to film this event? Mm-hmm. Right? You got a video crew coming in, or is it you at least have some cameras that you can, have people kind of at ringside recording the matches?
Are you going to live stream it?
Are you gonna live stream it?
People think like I'll put up a camera with YouTube, streaming the event and stuff like that. It's like, well, that's a whole thing if you do that. Like that's a production just to get that.
Oh yeah, and do you have strong enough internet, into that building? Not if there's Wi-Fi. Is there good Wi-Fi so you can stream it? Things like that. I mean, but it even comes down to promoting the event. So if you're gonna, if it's just a one-time thing, you kind of know if it's like a fundraiser or something. But if you're starting a promotion, like you got to give yourself enough time to promote the event. So, are you going to sell tickets? Are you printing these tickets? Are you doing online sales? Like, how's distribution of the tickets going to go? Who's designing a flyer? Are you going to have a flyer? Are you going to go hang up flyers? Who's designing the flyer?
Are you cutting YouTube promos of the wrestlers? When are you going to do that? Of them talking about the event? Are you going to get them promoting their matches beforehand? If it's a one-off show, you got to go find places where these guys are or have them send them to you on their phone. And are they going to send verticals, horizontals? Are they going to send you what you need? So much stuff.
Yeah, and I think maybe if it was just a one-time fundraiser or something, maybe you'd have a flyer or something, right? At least talking about the event. But yeah, who's distributing the flyers? Yep. The whole thing. Are you going to run ads on social media? Mm-hmm. What's that going to look like? Do you have a budget for that? Do you have a budget for the ring rental, and how much are you going to spend on talent? That's another thing to consider as well. That might determine who you can bring in, like what your budget is. Do you bring in a name? Do you bring, or you just have talent from the state, talent from the area? A lot of things people don't realize. And then,
and you're just, you haven't even really scratched the surface of like a lot of the issues you're going to come across as you're doing stuff. Like we talked about the ring, but do you have guardrails for the chairs? Do you have chairs? Is the venue that you have enough for what you're going to?
Chairs are huge. Just to get chairs. Right. You have to. Do they have them at the venue you're at, or do you have to go rent them?
Right.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
And that's just, for that, are you going to have an entranceway? Are you going to have to buy an entranceway? Are you going to have curtains to put up? Is the venue got a locker room? Does it have enough space for the guys you're bringing in? Do they have a concession stand? Does a concession stand sell alcohol? Or, like there's so many little things you do along the way that you've got to start checking off these boxes. And so many people understandably take on this undertaking on their own, saying immediately like, hey, I want to be in charge of like everything that my business or my event is doing. But you can't, like, you're going to miss something. And missing one thing means you're probably really missing 5 to 10 things.
Oh, yeah. And there's, even like music, lights, do you have a DJ? Do you have, what kind of audio equipment do you have? Microphones, just little things like that.
Do you have a ring announcer? Do you have somebody taking tickets at the door? Do you have a security guy that makes sure that if, people are getting rowdy, that they're going to calm them down? Do you have people selling merch, like not even merch that you've made because it's a one-off show, but like something for the wrestlers, something for this, something for that. Like it gets overwhelming. Like there's no such thing as a small show. Every show is a production. So
not at all.
I respect the people that put their time and effort into it and do it on a regular basis.
Especially if you're going into, say like you're doing a fundraiser or something at a school gym.
Mm-hmm.
They might want make sure you have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what they're comfortable being liable for.
Right.
So it just depends on like where you're going to have it. What kind of venue, or is there a committee involved at where you're going to host the events? You have no idea. And what's that rental on that venue going to cost?
Who's booking the show? And I don't mean that from a creative standpoint, because you're doing a one-off. It doesn't really involve storylines and stuff, but like who's going to make sure the talent knows when they're going on, who's supposed to be the good guy, bad guy, and who's supposed to win, like those little things. If you don't have a clear direction and you're worrying about, does the camera have batteries? Do we make sure we got enough popcorn? Is the microphone fully, like, or you're worrying about all that stuff and someone comes up to you and goes like, hey, what am I doing? Like it's going to be a lot, I don't know.
Yeah. A lot of little things people don't realize. And then you look at promotions that are running, every week or every month or twice a month, maybe they're just doing like every other month, but whatever their schedule is. But these are things you got to worry about basically every show, and then plus setup and tear down of the ring, and that's a whole nother thing. I know like for fundraising events, it's, you're better off just going to a promotion and almost doing like a sold show where you're paying them for the, the ring rental and the guys and they're booking the whole thing. And then you handle the rest of those details, That's a really nice way to go if you're doing a show like that. But if you're just doing your own show or starting a promotion, you really have to almost plan it out months in advance.
And that's,
just to plan all those little details out and then figure out where you're going to get your talent from,
Yeah. And then, I'm just piling on stuff because this is all stuff obviously that we've come across prior, but like, are you going to do belts if you're starting a promotion? What kind of belts are you going to have? Are you going to have tag belts? You're going to have a singles title. You're going to have a secondary title. You're going to have a women's title. You're going to have a hardcore title. You're going to have a TV title. Like you start getting into like some crazy stuff on like what you're going to do. And belts aren't cheap.
No. And I always encourage people like not to worry about belts. Like it's not as important right away. You can wait on. A lot of people think that they have to have all the tools and the equipment before they can start the show, right? Or before they can even have a show. And that's just not the case. Some people get hung up on that. Oh, I need all these custom belts. We need a tag heavyweight. We need a, ladies championship, it has to be custom branded. Everything has to be branded. It doesn't. I mean, I think you should start small, probably start smaller.
Well, Well,
get those later on once it takes off.
And just as an aside, right there, absolutely do not do a custom belt. I am a firm believer that you should stay as generic as possible with heavyweight or world or undisputed champion, some sort of ambiguity, because while, it's cool to have your promotion might not last forever. And having the DWWL belt, like,
we've seen those go south too many times.
Right.
Yeah.
You just got some metal
or one guy gets the belts and then, there's some kind of a falling out or, and then you got to go buy new belts and then they have a set of belts and then you got a set of belts.
And you're wondering, like,
and they're just
my promotion.
Yeah, those are the same custom belts, It just doesn't make any sense. But it happens. It happens all the time, and we've seen it. We've seen it happen multiple times over the years.
Yep.
It's just crazy. Generic belts is definitely the way to go,
in my opinion. And everyone's got, they're like, oh well, I make a lot of money, so it doesn't matter to me. It's like, okay, cool, that's your prerogative, like whatever your deal is. I'm just explaining to you from a place of love. That's not the greatest of moves. But I don't know. It's quite the undertaking.
And then you got to think too of during the show, like what happens if one of the ropes breaks? Do you have a backup rope? Do you have backup equipment?
Right.
Little things like that.
Like it's not your mat, right? If you're renting it or borrowing it, what happens if someone starts bleeding, right? Like, are you calling everything right then and getting them out of the ring? Are you letting them finish and buying a new mat for the guy? Are you buying a new canvas for the show because you're worried about stuff getting on it? Like, who's responsible for what when it comes to that stuff?
Yeah, and definitely the logistics of the whole thing, like how soon can you set up the ring and all that, all your equipment and your tables and chairs and all that. Can you do it the night before? Is it the day of? Make sure everybody's arriving at the time you need them to get everything set up. Things like that.
The weird thing about wrestlers, and it's real funny because, I played competitive softball, and competitive softball is real weird in that you'll have a team of 15 guys, but game day you'll have 11 show up, right? And it's like, oh God, like, wow, you guys all said you were in. But with wrestlers, you find that you book 10 and then 15 show up because they've always got a buddy that wants to work that, if you're around, you're helping and like get on a show.
And sometimes that saves your ass. Yeah.
But you can never plan on that.
Yeah. There's always going to be somebody that no shows, somebody that their car breaks down, they get hurt at a previous show the night before. Or they get sick. It always happens. The weather is a factor.
Are they not liking who they're working?
Yeah, it's just
I can't tell you. I've seen that at shows where it's like, F that. Like, I'm not working that guy. Like, I've got an ankle injury, and then you see him that they worked another show the day after or something like that, and it's like, that's so crappy.
Yeah. So, but you're always going to get stuck in those instance where you got to kind of on the fly, like change your matchups and things like that minutes before the show's going to start sometimes. Do you really want all that, chaos and pressure and anxiety? Like, can you handle that? Are you someone that can handle that kind of thing? Because it happens all the time. It's just crazy what goes into not only throwing an event, but throwing a successful event,
right. Right. And that's the other thing is you got to set your expectations and then meet those expectations. You have to set on my goal is to get 100 people in there. My goal is to get 1,000 people. Right. And then, or I want to have a really fun show. I want to have a really big name at the event. You got to set a goal, and you can't set everything. You're not going to sell 1 million tickets, have the best show in the world, and do everything. You got to be realistic about everything. But my advice would be set one goal and focus everything on that goal. If your goal is to sell 1,000 tickets to something, do what it takes to sell 1,000 tickets. Don't then peel off and then suddenly, well, but I really also want to have my buddies work a match. Oh, you know what? I really want to, make sure that like I can get this company to do some stuff here, or I really want to squeeze this in, or I really want the show to look like this. Like, no, once you've started to deviate from the 1,000 people plan, then like you're going to be lost very quickly. Like if your goal is something, you have to balls out, focus everything on that. When we worked at our previous place, my goal was always fill the venue, and your goal was always to get the clicks. Like that was kind of our synergy. Was your stuff was all around really making great content when it came to like the promos and stuff like that and the matches. And my goal was always, I want to do everything, make it look as perfect in here to get as many butts and seats. Now those things are going to cross over, right? The more people in there, the more clicks you're going to get. The more clicks you're going to get, the more people are going to come in. So they're not, mutually exclusive by any means. However, I did everything balls to the wall to do that. Like I didn't worry about myself. I worried about the referee being in the way of people. I worried about the cameramen walking around over people's feet. I worried about how many seats were in a certain area and stuff like that. And like, that's the mentality you have to have if you're going to achieve those goals.
Well, and, if the venue isn't as full, you still got to put on the show like it is,
right.
Like it is full. And sometimes that's really hard to do. People,
Yep.
I've been involved in a lot of shows where, especially when I was first starting, where there wasn't a lot of people there at all. There might be a handful of family and friends or something, or, I'm trying to think of like, what's the least amount of people I've worked in front of? I mean, I've been to some that are pretty small, but you got to work it like it's a packed house, because that's going to have them tell more people, go out and tell more people they saw that, and then they want to come next time, but I've been, I remember wrestling shows where kids would come, their parents would have the kids come and have their birthday parties at the shows, that's a blast. You know what I mean? Right. And, but even like, in a studio setting, if you don't have a huge space, and like your goal is to film everything to put on YouTube, you got a huge audience online. So you got to, even if there might not be a lot of people sitting in front of you that day, you got to remember that millions are going to see it on YouTube, after the fact. And then all that work that goes in, so if you're doing a weekly show or a monthly show, I mean, all that time that goes into editing those promos and posting those promos and, maybe boosting those promos on social and, uploading them and even just writing the descriptions and all that stuff for them. And, all that work that, like we both are familiar with putting in that kind of work and how stressful that can be too. But it takes a lot of work. And, some people that, maybe their role is just to show up and ref the show, or they show up and they're a worker on the show. They don't realize how much behind the scenes work that it takes to produce that show,
Right.
Especially if you have that could be a full-time job, but obviously, everyone has to have their own full-time jobs besides. So sometimes you're doing all that stuff on extra time, or late at night, And so you gotta, are you willing to take that on? You know what I mean? For no money.
Right.
Basically.
And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very brief with this, but if you decide to take all that on, that does not earn you anything. Okay. That does not earn you anything, because I see so many people that start early on and they believe because they're doing all this that people should, give them leeway with things and do things a different way. And it's like, no, you had access to tools and people and stuff like that could have helped you along the way. Suddenly this isn't time for you to go and be Johnny does whatever. Like you still have to work within the bounds of your talent, work within the bounds of your event and stuff like that. Like nobody cares that you were up until 8 a.m. cutting a promo or making a flyer for 3 days straight, meticulously looking at every little vector and stuff like that. It looks cool. It turned out great. Nobody cares. And it's not like, I mean that in a hateful way of like, you're wasting your time. What I mean by that is when you put in this energy, don't expect that you're afforded praise on the way out.
Oh yeah, no, I know, plenty of times where, I was up late editing footage to turn it around for the next, say you have a show on Saturday, you got to turn some stuff out on Sunday and have it ready to go for the next week. And, people don't realize like how much time that took, but you can't expect any credit for that or anything like that, but that's what has to be done to get if you want those views and that attention and that spotlight on your promotion, like those are the things that have to be done. Like someone has to do it. It just happens to be you or, the next guy. But you just basically have to be really passionate about the brand that you're working for and want everybody to succeed. So you're willing to put in that work, You
got to be self-motivated.
And I'll tell you though, when that all clicks and comes together, it's so rewarding to see like, oh, that we built that up. Now we got all these views and followers and, we really got a huge spotlight on us now. And people are coming to the shows and filling it up. They can't wait till the next one. And all that little stuff is worth it at the end of the day because you know what went into it. So, you feel more passionate about it then. But it's very rewarding and it might give you an opportunity or a talking point later on down the road maybe it's another job that you're applying for. Maybe, it's another promotion. You say, I did all this stuff and I have all these skills now, not just as a performer or a entertainer or a ref or a camera guy. Like I also can edit and do all these other things and do promotions, and that experience and knowledge is valuable, but it might be with a completely different project down the road. But just because you put in that work, you might get rewarded later on,
Right.
You got to kind of think of it that way too. But I personally have seen that kind of thing pay off and open a lot of doors. I think all the time and effort that I've put into wrestling, I've gotten out of it eventually in some other way,
That's fair. Would you say what would you say your biggest strength is coming out of doing a lot of the back end things from wrestling? What did you gain from it the most?
Well, even I think the most
and subjectively, like obviously there's it's whatever.
Well, you got to think like too, like I was always into podcasting and I'm getting in like the last few years I've been getting into video editing and things like that. And but I was always like for my say my shoot job, my real job, like I was into marketing anyways and SEO. So I always used to try to take the skills that I was learning in my real job and how can I apply those to wrestling and do those kind of things. So I was like always helping with the websites and the marketing and the online ads, but I was doing that stuff anyways in my real job. Right. And then I'd also take the skills that I was learning from wrestling and incorporate those into my real job, So I was kind of blending the two together and it was a great mix. But I think, the best thing that I've gotten out of it is probably the friendships, and I know so many people, and like for a while there, I didn't know some of the guys were still around, and I've gotten to reunite with so many people.
Yeah.
And then even just by having just different conversations, people that I didn't even know are now coming into the picture, and they're like, "Oh, I followed your stuff for a while now, man." Like, like everybody knows, who you are, and we followed you and love your stuff,
Right.
And that's kind of cool because you're like, oh, I didn't even realize, or I even meeting some guys that were around in the same time where I was involved with wrestling, but I never met them, we just never crossed paths. Well, now paths are starting to cross, so.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's cool.
It is cool. Because you feel like when you work the back office stuff for a wrestling show, right? The planning committee stuff, when you're a part of a group or a conglomerate of people who really work well together and at times, don't work well together. When you see those people later on, it's like you went to war with them, right? And it's like, oh, remember this crazy time when everything went awry and we had to come together to figure shit out? Like, you went to war with these people, and that's what it feels like. So it can be really rewarding just experiencing that with people and then doing that later. So that's another point why I personally recommend working with a group of people if you do an event, even if you're the kind of person, and I'm not even gonna say like it's crazy to think this way, but there's a lot of people who think like, no, it's my money on the line, it's my name, it's my reputation, it's my like whatever, I'm doing all this, I can't put that in the hands of somebody else. Like, even if you're that way, like, you got to find a way to be that way, because man, it can be disastrous real quick.
Oh yeah, it's not all like dude. Wrestling shows are super frustrating, very stressful. You're dealing with a lot of even talent-wise. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of different egos. Mm-hmm. You're holding a lot of different hands, especially if you get sponsors involved with your product. There might be some things that they don't like. There might be some things that, guys don't want to, don't want to work certain guys. Like all these egos get involved, like things get, feelings get hurt, things get personal. Like you have to deal with all that stuff. But even you yourself might get, mad at some things, but at the end of the day, when people show up and the show goes off without a hitch and the show's over and you can kick back and be like, oh, it's awesome. It's over. We can on to the next one,
Right. It takes a special kind of psychotic person to go through that once and go, yeah, let's do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you don't want to deal with the headaches or,
right?
You don't want to field the calls, but
I equated to that like that family member that wants to host Thanksgiving, and it always is a nightmare for them, and they're super stressed all the time, and like they get to the event and it doesn't even seem like they're having fun. Like, they're cooking, they're making sure everyone's taken care of, they sit down, the meal's okay, but they wished it had been better. There's fights that happen, little small verbal stuff and whatever, and then everything finally is over. They take a breath, they sip their wine, they're like, can't wait to do it again next year. Like, it's like, what happened there? Why would you ever want to do that again? But there's something there. There's something inside that.
Dude, if you can pull off and promote a wrestling show, you can do any event. I remember for one of my jobs several years back, they were throwing an event, like a conference. It's just people talking on a stage, and people are running around like chickens with their head cut off, and just stressing out about the just most minor little things, and just like just overworked. Oh, there are enough candies on each table, and are there, pamphlets on each chair and all this stuff? And I'm like, chill out. like this is nothing, dude.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the other thing is, like, it's real funny when you've been through a nightmare show, right? And I'm going to put a nightmare show out there. We had a snow show. I'll never forget this. I don't even know if you were able to make it, but because you traveled to the studio that we worked at from pretty far away. Like, it was a good hour, 45 minutes. I don't know how long.
It was a good drive, and if there was any kind of it was weird. The weather pattern would just run right through there, and it either closed down the road,
right,
or it didn't.
right. And we had a bad one, and it was after I had foolishly convinced the owner to run weekly shows, because we ran our first weekly show. It was the Halloween episode that I said I can fill that studio on Halloween, and I did, and it was cool that I did. And it unfortunately set forth a bunch of issues after that. But it was shortly thereafter, so it was like 2.5 months later. Big snowstorm. We had 5 people show up. And that was the week that my camera also fell mid-show. And wrestlers didn't show up. And we didn't have enough food, we thought. So we over-ordered. We went out and braved the snow and got a bunch of food. And it turns out for 5 people, we have nowhere to put all this stuff. We had to make it that day. And it was just a disaster of a show doing everything. And then after doing the show, kicking out the 5 people, you're cutting promos and you're trying to do that in a positive mindset. And it's just oh man, I'm glad that's over. But you sit through that and you're watching these guys go, oh, we only sold 150 tickets. So we really needed to sell 200. It's dude, you don't even know what a problem is. I get that might put some stress on you, but man, you'll have an experience once while doing it that you'll go that's the floor. And then at some point later on, you'll hit that floor even worse. But it's good to be reminded of those, because you're right. When you do later events and you're oh my God, half the people didn't show up. You're oh, cool. Half the people did. That's the mentality you have to have. And it helps you when you do these wrestling shows get that way.
Oh yeah, and especially if after these shows, then you have to, a lot of the times you're tearing down the ring afterwards. You have to, if you're renting a venue, you have to clean up the venue. You have to, get the keys back to wherever you paid for the bill, at the office, wherever you paid for it. And then you got to haul that ring back somewhere, and put it in storage. I mean, you're talking it's a long night, you're up into the AMs, and then good luck getting to sleep because you're so amped up for another couple hours when you get home, But yeah, I can't wait till the next one.
I can't wait till the next one. I know, and so you tell me right now, I want to do this one-off for my birthday. I think we might have a venue lined up. But the problem I have, as I told you, is I've got to worry about the date now, because the date's going to cause a lot of issues.
Yeah.
The 3 dates that I've given as potential dates to give to the venue have already gotten shot down by some wrestlers, because one date is before a show. And they don't want to work a show before a show, which I thought was weird. I thought everybody did triple shots, double shots, and stuff like that. I know people that did 2 in a day, a double shot in the single day, let alone just a Friday, Saturday.
People do double shots, and
another
for
one
sure
was after a major show, but before a slightly less big show. And I was given the feedback, well, the guys that would work your show would probably want to do the Sunday show and won't work your show. And the guys that work the Friday show are going to be tired and won't want to do the Saturday show. And I'm like, okay, cool. I think that's a lie, because I've seen those people do those.
Tired.
Right. It's just I'm getting a lot of excuses and stuff like that. And it's just kind of and granted, this is from a small subset of 3 people when I'm running these dates by them. But it's just one of those things that I'm starting to get worried about that. And then I haven't even reached out to somebody about a ring yet. I've got two people that are fairly local to me that I think I can reach out to, and they would be cool with working me on it. But what happens if those guys aren't? I don't know what I would do. So I've got to get that all lined up before getting the venue lined up, but I can't get the venue lined up without any sort of certainty that everything is going to happen, and I can't do that without a date.
Well, I would just pick the date and go from there. Dude, if guys are saying they'll work a Friday, but then they can't work Saturday because they're tired, they don't need to be on the show.
Okay, I've got some names I'm going to throw out here.
Y'all need to train more.
We're gonna end this podcast and we're gonna start the after hours and find that one strictly on the YouTube under the Patreon. You got to get behind the $5 paywall to listen to who I'm gonna fucking flame.
We'll get into my thoughts on training in another
we'll get to that
episode.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see how it all turns out.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it totally working out and being a fun night. Maybe, maybe the date has to change to the following month or something. Maybe it doesn't actually have to be your birthday weekend. I mean, it would be nice.
I'm fairly flexible with the weekend. I don't think I can get away with a Thursday show.
No, I wouldn't. No.
So I'm pretty much Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And, time is also another thing. Like, do I want to do like an afternoon show and do like an after party? Do I want to do an evening show where afterwards I got to worry about cleaning up and not really being able to do anything after? Like, there's a lot to freaking figure out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to create a committee to rule them all.
Yeah, I would think like an afternoon show or something.
I think an afternoon show is a good idea.
Still got some celebration time left, right? Everybody helps tear down the ring, clean up.
Right.
Not just one or two guys.
And guys can do double shots then if they want to, some of the talent, theoretically.
Sure, double shots.
I don't know who would, but
people know how to do double shots.
Yeah, but like I want to bring in people that are going to be cool and have fun and work well together. And while that's a pipe dream, like I don't need a name, I feel like. And what I mean by that is my goal is not to fill up a venue. My goal is to put on a really fun, really clean show with a good amount of people. I'm not trying to get 1,000 people. Not even trying to get.
But you definitely want the public to come to this.
Yes, this will be something where like I would sell tickets to my friends. Mm-hmm. And maybe like a special side of the ring, for a discounted price to people that I know, put a section together of my stuff and then the public would do all the rest and I would sell them at a normal price, and stuff like that. My friends would get like early access and late access to the venue so that way they can get stuff in and whatever. I would do something for friends and family ahead of time, but I would not strictly just make it friends and family. Yes, it would be a show to the public.
Oh, yeah. Then I'd think, you'd be fine. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Except for the planning phase.
Except for the whole stress until it's done.
Month, 2 months or, yeah. Jesus.
But no, I think that sounds like a blast. It sounds like a fun birthday.
We'll see.
I might even work that.
Don't put that out there. Don't put that out there.
Do you think we can persuade anyone if I work the show?
Yes. Yes. Let me put that out into the public right now. Right. Everything.
Put a couple tweets out there just for the vibe. That's funny.
Really funny.
Nice, man. I hope that works out. And, if anybody has any questions about starting a venue or promoting an event or, anything really about that nature, hit us up. Hit us up on Twitter.
You know, it's funny you say that. I've actually had a few referees reach out to me and just say like, "Hey, you know, like how long have you been in the business and stuff like that?" Like, I just started. You know,
Yeah.
like what are some tips for you can give to me early on about just like how to handle myself? Like, obviously, I'm getting training, but people are like, "Hey, what are some of the pitfalls and stuff that you came early on?" I'm like, "Oh, here, let me tell you." Like, I'm not going to take you under my wing because by no means am I that full of myself personally. But like I've been through a lot of personalities. I've been through a lot of different scenarios, and definitely can give that kind of feedback and help people as much as I can. That would be great. Yeah, if you have any questions about running a promotion or anything, you know, not only are we great resources, but we know a lot of great people. You know, I know some great guys that do flyers in the area. They do flyers for a lot of the promotions. It's the All Heels guys. They make just fantastic flyers. Just want to shout them out. You know, I know a lot of guys that do great video. Ring film dude, want to put him out there. Like, guy does great work. Not only does he take great video, puts some great promos out there. Like, there's some great people in the area that put some like cool stuff together, and we can definitely get you in touch with them. But we also have tips and stuff like that if you ever have questions.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, and definitely when we say we've seen every scenario, it's every damn scenario
As,
you can think of. We've seen it all.
yep. Seen it all.
I remember just you saying like refs reaching out. I have a lot of guys reach out to me about you know, bookings and stuff like that. And it's just funny, like, because I like meeting you know, new people and then like hearing about their character, and you know, maybe they'll send me some matches or something to look at. And sometimes I'm not even looking at their matches that they send me. I just see their character and who they are, and I'm like, oh, like I could totally do something with these guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they just look like they have the personality to. I'm more looking for personalities and guys that are cool and, you know, want to just go out and have fun. You know,
Like, you can tell almost like immediately with someone if they're willing to embarrass the shit out of themselves, right?
oh yeah,
And
totally.
and I mean that in such a very specific way, because there are people that I've seen embarrass themselves that I don't think knew that they were doing what they were doing. But I think leaning into the ridiculousness is what I mean by that. And there are certain people who you just have a conversation with them and they're like, oh yeah, you get it. You understand the business.
Oh, you have to be able to make fun of yourself.
Right.
If you take yourself way too seriously, like you're not gonna last too long.
Right.
You know, you got to be able to make fun of yourself and be able to do anything. Just have fun. You know, work any character. Maybe you're working a gimmick under a mask or something. Like, you got to be doing all those things. But I think it's real funny though when just in this last year or so, but like just seeing like, or when anybody really, when a new guy shows up or a guy comes in and like just shows up and he's like, hey, I'm a ref, you know, if you need an extra guy or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, man, cool. Let's see, you know, see what you got. Don't be scared. You gotta, like I told these guys, you gotta jump in the water and swim, man. You know,
Sure.
you can't just sit on the sidelines. Like, that's what I see. Like, a lot of talent out there that you know, maybe doesn't get an opportunity. You know, they're not getting the opportunities yet. Well, let's figure out how to get those opportunities, because that's the only way you're going to learn is by jumping in the pool, man. You know.
Yeah, I think there's two kinds of people who don't get work in this business. It's people who don't apply themselves to the commitment, right? And what I mean by that is like, you know, it's like, oh, I've trained, I know how to do some stuff. That should get me enough to get me in places. Like, no, you've got to talk to people. You've got to shoot the bullshit before and after. You got to set up the ring, tear down the ring. You got to offer to do things, but make sure while you're doing that, you're talking to people and getting your name out there and doing things. But there's so many people that fall into that lull of like, I'm not willing to do that next step. I'll show up, I'll do what I'm supposed to be doing, and then that should be enough. It's like, nah, man, you gotta give the plus one. You gotta show that you're willing to be ridiculous and worth the investment. And then there's the second kind of person. And I'm going to try and be as vague about this as possible, but it's the kind of person who goes, this is who I am. If you don't like me, then you're a problem. Like, and they want bookings everywhere. And it's like, well, hold on. Like, I can't, if you start giving me boundaries, like I need my music, I need my entrance, I need to get paid this much. You start giving me limitations. Well, that's, I can't work with that. Like, it's hard to work with that. And it's like, well, I know this person, I've got this person, I've been on this show. It's like, I don't care. I can't use that. I can't use what you're bringing me, and there's no flexibility there. And that's the other side of the window. There's the person who doesn't apply anything. And then there's a person who's so not flexible and is dead set on something. It's like, well, if I can't use either of you, like, those are on you.
And that's the real world, even in the workplace.
Right.
That's the same stuff. Anything that happens in wrestling can relate to your job, and you're probably that same way at work too. You know what I mean? Like, and you probably don't understand why you're not getting to where you want to be. You know? Yeah, you definitely got to be flexible, and you definitely got to keep training. There's no point in your wrestling career where you're like, oh, I'm just done training. I don't need to train anymore. I just show up at shows. Right. Well, good luck to you, because you need to keep training throughout that whole thing. Because if you're not training, you're not going to go too far.
And I talk about this a lot, and I'll be very brief about this. There's a reason a lot of these guys in AEW are getting hurt. And a lot of people think it's because they do moves that are dangerous. And yes, there may be a shred of truth to that. There may be a shred of truth to the risks that they're taking and stuff like that. But the reality, of my opinion, just knowing the wrestling business and things, the ins and outs, how they work is the reason WWE's model worked of doing house shows was because guys were working with each other 3 to 5 times a week before doing a major event. Before a WrestleMania, guys were having house shows where they were trading and figuring out how they were going to lock up with each other, doing an arm drag, doing their comebacks. They're figuring out that stuff without saying like, hey, what's your big cutoff? Like, they're not saying, like, before having a match, like, how are we going to figure this out? They were doing these things on a regular basis. And I think that's where training comes into play is you got to either be working all the time and working some talent that's different, but working great talent frequently. And then the other part of it is just making sure that you're sharpening your blade, It's just not good enough working, once or twice a week. It's just not anymore. Like, you can stay in shape all you want, but like, if you're not crisp because of working a lot and doing the training, like, I don't know, man, longevity is going to be hard.
Yeah. One time, I had the opportunity to sit down with Ric Flair for a couple of days and just pick his brain and talk to him, and he told me straight up one time that I was asking him about training, or if there's any point where he stopped training, just to work shows, and he said that, he trained every day, regardless if he was a student or a full-time worker, and he said that, if training isn't your main focus, he said, you will never make it in this business. And that's true. You see it all the time. Guys that blow out because they weren't as committed. You know what I mean? So, there's definitely some truth to that.
Yeah.
And that's from the greatest worker in the world.
Right. Talk about doing double shots. That guy was working 5 times a weekend, and one of it was usually in a hotel at 2 a.m.
Triple shots. Yeah.